Clark Gable, power meets a line in the sand. The mythology says Hollywood kings smile and keep moving. Clark Gable didn't. In 1939, on the set of a film bigger than anything in the town's history, he saw segregated facilities for black cast and crew and refused to keep working unless it changed. The stakes were massive. He was the lead. The studio expected compliance. Instead, he drew a line, and the line held. Years earlier, he'd already signaled where he stood, declining to celebrate in spaces that barred his black colleagues. Gable wasn't an outsider. He was the poster. That's why it mattered. When the safest move was to stay out of it, he stepped directly into it. And he didn't make a speech about courage, he made a demand. Marlon Brando, the biggest stage, used loudly. By the early 1970s, Marlon Brando could have done anything and been forgiven for it. He chose not to show up for the one night everyone shows up for, sending a young Indigenous activist to reject his Oscar and call out Hollywood's portrayals of Native peoples. The room didn't clap. It bristled. Some mocked, some booed. The aftermath wasn't kind. But Brando wasn't measuring applause. He was aiming at impact. It wasn't a one-night performance either. He had been using interviews, money, and his sheer gravitational field to challenge comfortable narratives for years. Imperfect, messy, unpredictable, and unmistakably willing to break the silence in the loudest possible place. Jean Seberg, When Solidarity Makes You a Target. Jean Seberg's face sold the new wave to the world. Her convictions made her dangerous to the powerful. She supported black liberation causes publicly and privately, then learned what it means when institutions decide to make an example of you. Smears, planted stories, isolation. She didn't get a safer career arc for her trouble. She got scrutiny with teeth. The point of a campaign like that isn't just to punish one person. It's to warn everyone else. Jean stood anyway and paid anyway. Hollywood gives Lifetime Achievement Awards to people who color inside the lines. She chose a different canvas and the cost was real. Tony Curtis. Keep the door open or walk. Tony Curtis was a studio-era star who understood both leverage and stakes. In a time when black actors were routinely minimized, he pushed back with the only language studios fully understand: keep the role, keep the billing, or keep going without me. It's easy to underestimate how radical that is until you remember the era. The good soldier choice was to nod, get the close-up, and let the cut happen somewhere above your pay grade. Curtis didn't pass the decision upward. He put it on the table. The result was a film that gave audiences two leads, not one silhouette next to a star, and a signal to executives that too controversial wasn't going to fly forever. Elizabeth Taylor. Loyalty that didn't flinch. Elizabeth Taylor had all the conventional reasons to avoid controversy: box office expectations, headlines to manage, a public image to polish. She chose people over optics. When the industry tried to exclude a black friend from the rooms where acceptability was curated, she didn't accept it. When an epidemic arrived that too many preferred to ignore, she refused to. There's a specific kind of courage in standing next to someone when the cost is social, sustained, and mostly invisible. Phone calls that stop coming, doors that don't open, events that somehow fill up. Taylor didn't campaign for credit. She made solidarity a habit. Jane Fonda, paying full price. If Hollywood had handed Jane Fonda a script for an easy life, she threw it back. She used her fame to platform voices the industry didn't want to hear. Civil rights organizers, Indigenous leaders, people targeted by systems with long memories. The pushback came exactly as predicted. Labels, blacklists, headlines designed to freeze anyone considering a similar path. She didn't fold. The years moved on, causes changed names, but the through line stayed: show up, lend the mic, put the money where the mic was. The point wasn't to be praised by history. It was to be useful in the present. Robert Redford. Build the pipeline, change the system. It's one thing to demand better stories. It's another to build the scaffolding that lets them exist. Robert Redford did the second thing. He leveraged star power to create a place where independent filmmakers, often women and people of color, could get oxygen. That doesn't make splashy headlines the way a protest speech does, but it rewires the industry's nervous system. A new director breaks through. A performer gets cast because someone saw their film in a mountain town. A story greenlit elsewhere because a programmer remembers a voice that won't leave their head. Systems are built to repeat themselves. Redford built a new loop. Gregory Peck. The quiet integrity of the long arc. Playing a principled lawyer on screen is one thing. Bringing that moral spine into the boardroom, the press conference, and the meeting where, maybe not this time, is the safest answer is another. Gregory Peck chose the second. He spoke plainly about racism when platitudes were the approved vocabulary. He put his name and resources behind people in danger, not just ideas in fashion. And when pressure arrived to blunt the sharp edges of a story, he didn't mistake palatable for true. The roles made him beloved. The choices made him consistent. Others, who refused the easy route. James Garner flew under the radar as a star and over it as a human being, showing up where it counted, shoulder to shoulder, when neutrality was the career move. Steve McQueen used checks and quiet influence when he wasn't going to be the face of a march. Dennis Hopper made work that didn't let comfortable audiences look away and took the professional hits for it. Not everyone made noise in the same key, but the melody was clear. If the room won't make space, bring a chair or build a new room. Why these stories still matter. It's tempting to flatten people into mascots for virtue. That does the audience a disservice. These were complicated lives in a complicated town. Some choices were heroic. Some, elsewhere, were not. That's the point. Courage is situational. You don't need perfection to do the right thing on a day when it isn't safe. What connects these stories isn't a halo. It's a refusal to accept the premise that silence is the toll for success. Every era has its version of "don't rock the boat." The language changes, the incentives get rebranded, the message is the same. Keep the money moving, don't slow production. Don't make anyone uncomfortable who can make a phone call you can't. And then, somebody says no. Sometimes it's a walkout. Sometimes it's a public stand. Sometimes it's a quiet check to get someone else to the microphone. Sometimes it's structural, building a ladder instead of tossing a rope. Hollywood loves a redemption arc. These are something different, resistance arcs. No triumphant score, no guaranteed third act, just people deciding which consequence they can live with. Look closely and you notice the pattern. Leverage matters. It's easier to pull a system forward when you can absorb the blow. That's why it's significant when the poster, the headliner, the bankable name is the one who leans. It redistributes risk. But leverage isn't everything. Jean Seberg didn't have the insulation of an untouchable career. She stood anyway and took a storm that would have collapsed most. Courage looks like that too. The person who knows there isn't a safe landing and still steps off the edge. That's not a call to martyrdom. It's a reminder that allyship has a cost, and the cost is the point. If there were none, it would be branding. So, what do we take from the old stories? That the calculus hasn't changed as much as we like to think. There is always a quieter path and a sharper one. The quieter path keeps your name off certain lists. The sharper one gets other names into the room. When you're lucky enough to carry a megaphone, the question isn't whether you can keep it clean. It's whether you can use it before the batteries die. They didn't fix Hollywood. No single act ever does. But they pushed. They carved space. They made it possible. Easier, not easy for the next person to be heard. That's how industries change. Argument by argument, demand by demand, door by door. And that's why these choices still echo. Not because they were perfect, but because they were contagious. Refuse the bystander role. In a business that rewards immaculate timing, they chose the inconvenient moment. In a town that choreographs applause, they stood in silence and let the room decide. They lost things. Roles, deals, comfort. And gained something less visible and more durable. A record of what they did when it wasn't trendy to care. That is the legacy. not the myth of fearlessness, but the practice of conscience. And if there's a lesson worth stealing from old Hollywood, it's this one. Don't wait for the scene to ask for courage. Bring it to the set.